Hi, my name is Stephen Murray, and this is The Knoll, an online gathering place for the people of Oak Knoll Lutheran Church and a place to share our community stories. This season on The Knoll, there are several stories about travel and finding God along the way. Sometimes we have to get out of our daily routines to be able to examine ourselves and see where God really fits in our lives. Sometimes we have to get out of our routine to be able to listen to what God has to tell us. In this week's story, Intern Pastor Ben Dyrhaug visits the birthplace of one of his favorite saints.
A good number of years ago, I was in college and I was studying abroad in the Czech Republic, and I was able to travel around Europe and see all these places. One of the most unique places I went was in Italy. I went to Rome. And I was a history major in college, so I took a class on ancient Rome, and it was amazing to tour the Roman Forum and to know what all the buildings were and everything that had happened there. There was also a place I wanted to go to north of the city of Rome called Assisi, which was the home of Francis of Assisi, who you may or may not have heard of. He was a saint who lived around 800 years ago, voluntarily took on a life of poverty. He grew up in a rich family of merchants, but decided that God was calling him to let go of his wealth and instead care for the lepers and the poor in his community. Also had a deep love for creation. He called the sun brother sun and the moon sister moon, and if you've heard of that prayer of his. I've always been a big fan of St. Francis, and I was going to Assisi just by myself, and I got off the train, and there was kind of the newer town below, kind of up on this mountain. There was the old town with all the historical sites, and that's where I wanted to go. But I only had the Czech currency, the Czech crown, and I didn't have any euros, and so I couldn't get up to the old town. And, I was trying to talk with the bus master, I suppose would be his title. Just trying to say, would you take these? And nope. And there weren't any ATMs or anything nearby, so I was stuck. Out of the blue, there was this lady who had heard my plea and came up to me and was like, oh, well, I'll just pay your bus ticket, because there was a bus that went up to the old town. So that was a blessing, just that this random stranger would pay for my bus fare. So I got up to the old town and visited all these sites, the old castle up there, and St. Francis's tomb where he's buried, and St. Clare, who was kind of a female figure in the early Franciscan movement, who was very important and was inspired by Francis and followed in his footsteps in also caring for the poor and living a life of simplicity. So while I was there that day, it was, I guess a word I'd use is magical. If you know these things, if you know the history, it kind of comes alive. To see somebody like St. Francis and St. Clare who took Jesus's message seriously and to follow in Jesus's way as they did, it was very inspiring for me. Just that day, I had been going through a tough time in my life at this point in college. There were a lot of things changing and just a lot of uncertainty and difficulty with a lot of things. And this was one of the most blessed days that I have in living memory, because it was such a peaceful and beautiful place. You could just feel St. Francis and St. Clare, their spirit just there, and you could feel God just present as you're walking down the streets or, walking down the kind of the vineyards there. It was so beautiful and just such a scenic landscape. And you see the Franciscan friars walking around town, and that was pretty cool. But I found a spot to pray down there and just kind of did this centering prayer. If you've heard of it, the prayer of St. Francis, which, historically probably wasn't written by St. Francis, but is in the spirit of who he was and how he lived out his faith. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, and it is in pardoning that we're pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. So I just was in a quiet place and was praying this kind of over and over, and just trying to be centered in this prayer. And it brought some difficult things up. And, it was like facing those things with knowing that God is a God of love and that I'm forgiven, that this prayer could be something so consoling and could be something that could speak a word of peace, but also give me a sense of direction. Because I'm like, where am I going at this time? I was thinking, like, where am I going with my life? And this prayer really became kind of a mantra or something for me, kind of like a creed of like, oh, this is where, and just kind of a simple way of following Christ to bring hope and to bring love and joy into the world. And, I think here at Oak Knoll, the fruits of the Spirit, that like we are called to bring these things into the world. And that is a way that we follow Jesus. We embody these things that are given to us as gifts from God. It was just a magical day. I had this great sense of peace after having this time of prayer. These are places we can live. Prayer is something we do, but it's also a way of living. It's a way that we engage the world through, embodying Christ's love and Christ's peace in our lives.
The Knoll is a production of Oak Knoll Lutheran Church in Minnetonka, Minnesota. Pastor J. Rudy, Senior Pastor. Music performed by Matt Serrar and produced by me, Stephen Murray. If you would like to learn more about Oak Knoll Lutheran Church, please visit us on the web at oklutheran.org or check out the live stream of our Sunday worship on YouTube every week at 9:30 Central. If you would like to share your story as part of the Knoll podcast, you can find information on how to get involved on our website. Thanks for listening, and God bless.